They say technology never lies until it cuts you deep. I'm dressed in my wedding attire, standing on the cusp of what should be the happiest day of my life, when a sudden email notification pierces the silence. The cold, sterile glow of my phone screen reveals the unthinkable. My fiancé has dumped me via email, shattering every dream I once held dear. The sharp beep of the notification echoes in my ears, and a sudden chill grips my heart, as if the world itself has turned icy. He thought an email was the end. Little did he know, it was just the beginning. I still remember the moment I first opened that email like it was etched in time. Leading up to the wedding, every day had been a whirlwind of excitement and hope, a dream in the making. I had believed that our love was written in the stars, that every promise and every plan would culminate in the perfect union. Then, without warning, my phone buzzed with a notification. I hesitated, heart pounding, and read the message on the screen. In a few cold, detached lines, he had ended everything. His words were clinical and void of emotion, a digital dismissal that shattered all I had ever imagined. It was as if every hope I had nurtured was reduced to mere pixels on a screen, each one a reminder of a future that would never be. The email was brief and unforgiving, a stark, cold message that left no room for conversation or explanation. I felt the shock radiate through my body, a sharp pain that struck me deep in the chest. Every bit of energy, every dream was suddenly stripped away by the impersonal click of a button. I stared at the screen, unable to move, as the sterile glow of the display bore into my eyes. The silence that followed was deafening, the world around me falling away into a void of disbelief and sorrow. I could almost hear the distant hum of a machine, a reminder that technology had become the conduit of my undoing. In that moment, the simple beep of my phone transformed into a digital dagger, plunging deep into the very core of my being. I felt as if I had been betrayed by the very medium that was supposed to bring us closer, turning our love story into a series of cold, calculated pixels. The shock was overwhelming, a bitter taste that filled my mouth, and a chill that crept along my skin, as if the warmth of the day had been sucked away by the impersonal nature of his goodbye. That email wasn't just a rejection, it was a statement. It told me that everything we had built, every promise whispered in moments of vulnerability, was suddenly meaningless. The message, with its flat, emotionless tone, made it clear that my dreams were now nothing more than data in a void, a disposable moment in a digital age. I felt a surge of grief and anger, emotions twisting inside me like a storm. It was a betrayal so profound that it seemed to erase the possibility of love itself. Yet as I sat there in that crushing silence, a spark of defiance began to take hold. In that instant, I realized that while he thought an email was the end, it was only the beginning of a new chapter in my life. His impersonal dismissal was the catalyst I needed, a brutal wake-up call that forced me to confront my own worth. I clenched my jaw, feeling the sting of betrayal transform into a cold resolve. I knew then that I would not allow this moment to define me. Instead, it would be the turning point that propelled me towards a future where I was in control, where every hurtful word and every pixel of that digital dagger would be repurposed into the strength to rise again. He may have thought he had ended our story with one impersonal click, but little did he know. It was only the spark that set my true journey in motion. The wedding day began with a bittersweet promise of new beginnings, but nothing could have prepared me for the shock that awaited. As I stood there in my carefully chosen dress, every detail of the day meticulously planned for happiness, the atmosphere shifted. Guests gathered, smiling and laughing, unaware that behind the polished veneer, a storm was about to break. I had already clutched that digital dagger from an email that had shattered my dreams, and yet I had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that time would heal the wounds. Then, amidst the soft murmur of well-wishers and the gentle clink of champagne glasses, he appeared. My heart skipped a beat as I saw him, the very man who had once dismissed our love with a cold, impersonal email, standing at the entrance. His presence was jarring. His appearance was disheveled, his eyes wide with a mix of desperation and regret. The air in the room thickened with disbelief. Whispers spread like wildfire among the guests as he slowly made his way toward the altar, his every step laden with the weight of his own misjudgment. I felt the silence of the moment press down on me, each heartbeat echoing with the memory of his earlier rejection. His timing was inconceivable. There he was, trying to salvage something he had callously discarded, now reduced to a shadow of the man I once believed in. His eyes, which once sparkled with empty promises, now shimmered with unspoken apologies. Yet it was too late. The room seemed to split into two realities, one filled with joy and celebration, and the other tainted by his desperate, awkward return. As he reached the front, the murmurs of the crowd grew louder, mingling with the soft strains of music that now felt incongruent with the tension. I could see his hands tremble, the weight of his actions evident in every faltering step he took. He tried to speak, his voice shaky and low, as if afraid that any word might shatter the fragile hope he clung to. I'm so sorry, he managed, his voice barely cutting through the thick silence. In that moment, every eye in the room fixed upon us, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath. I stood rooted, a mix of cold anger and deep sorrow swirling inside me. The betrayal I had endured through that heartless email had already begun to define the memory of my day. But now his presence twisted that memory into a final, unbearable humiliation. My mind raced back to every moment of neglect and every whisper that had condemned me. Each flash of the cameras, each strained glance from the guests, served as a reminder that the promise of love had been replaced by the sting of deception. Yet, amid the chaos and pain, a quiet determination began to build within me. I realized, in that excruciating moment, that his desperate appearance was not a plea for forgiveness. It was a testament to his own undoing. The same man who had thought he could dismiss me with an email now stood before me, pleading, with nothing to offer but his hollow regrets. I felt a steely resolve solidify in my chest. This was the final act of a tragedy he had written, and I was determined to reclaim my narrative. In the midst of that overwhelming silence, I met his gaze with a calm that belied the storm inside me. I thought of all the nights I had spent alone, with my pain, all the times I had silently vowed that I would not let his indifference define me. Now, as I looked at him, his eyes reflecting a mixture of shame and desperate longing, I knew that his comeback was as meaningless as it was pathetic. Every moment in that surreal scene crystallized into a single, irrevocable truth. I was no longer the person he once knew, nor was I willing to be dragged back into his world of broken promises. The wedding, a day meant for joy, had turned into a stage for his final, futile attempt at redemption, a desperate gesture that only served to underscore the gulf between the person I had become and the man who had abandoned me. And so, in that charged atmosphere, as the whispers of the crowd grew into an approving murmur, I stood tall, resolute in my decision. His apology hung in the air, empty and unconvincing, while I silently vowed that I would never again allow his recklessness to mar the life I was building. The shock of his return was now just another stepping stone in my journey, a reminder that some people, no matter how deeply they hurt you, are destined to fade into irrelevance. In the quiet aftermath of that unbearable day, I found myself alone in a dim, silent room, a space that had become both my prison and my refuge. The echoes of the wedding's humiliation still haunted me, each memory a searing reminder of the cold email and the desperate return that shattered the promise of forever. As the noise of the celebration faded into an oppressive silence, I sat by the window, staring out at a city that moved on without me. In that solitary moment, the pain and betrayal mingled with a deep, raw despair, and I felt as if every tear I had ever shed had etched itself into my soul. But amidst the darkness, a quiet, stubborn flame began to flicker. I recalled every moment when I had given my all, the countless hours of hope, the dreams I had built so carefully, and realized that those parts of me were still intact, still burning bright beneath the weight of rejection. The hurt was deep, a wound that seemed too vast to ever heal, yet in its depth lay a spark of defiance. I stared into the mirror, my eyes red from sleepless nights, and saw not just the scars of heartbreak, but also the reflection of a woman who had endured more than she ever thought possible. In that raw and vulnerable moment, I understood that the end of one chapter was merely the start of another. The turning point came slowly, like a whisper cutting through the static of despair. I began to question the narrative that had been forced upon me, that I was unworthy, that I was defined by one callous email and a desperate, shameful return. The thought that I was nothing without his approval, without his fleeting attention, started to crumble as I recalled the strength I had hidden inside me all along. I began to see that every moment of pain, every bitter memory, was not a mark of failure, but the fuel for a monumental comeback. I made a silent vow then. If no one was willing to acknowledge my worth, I would forge it with my own hands. That night, in the solitude of my small room, I gathered every piece of hurt and disappointment, each one transforming into a stepping stone toward a future that I would build on my own terms. I wrote down my thoughts, letting each word spill out as a declaration of intent. I vowed that I would not be confined by the betrayal that had once seemed insurmountable. Instead, I would harness that very pain, molding it into a driving force that would redefine who I was. In the quiet moments, as the clock ticked softly in the background and the night deepened around me, I began to plan. I scoured through old journals and faded photographs, not to relive the hurt, but to remind myself of the resilience I had once possessed. I reached out to mentors and absorbed every story of those who had risen from similar ashes. Their words became a lifeline. Each piece of advice a spark that rekindled the fire of possibility. Slowly, the paralyzing grip of despair loosened, replaced by a burgeoning determination that felt almost tangible, a promise that I would rise again. I started setting small goals, updating my resume, exploring new skills, and even reaching out to acquaintances who had always believed in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. Each tiny victory, whether it was a supportive message from a friend or a moment of clarity in the quiet of dawn, built a scaffold upon which I would reconstruct my life. The pain of that day, once a crushing weight, now fueled my ambition. It whispered that I was meant for so much more than the role of a broken, forgotten promise. The transformation was not immediate, but it was undeniable. Every day as I pushed myself to take one more step forward, the whispers of self-doubt began to fade. I learned to see my scars not as reminders of weakness, but as symbols of my journey. a roadmap of the obstacles I had overcome. With every small success, whether it was a new job opportunity or the start of a creative project, I reclaimed a piece of my identity that had been lost to neglect. I began to smile again, not out of fleeting happiness, but from a deep, abiding certainty that I was in control of my own destiny. The loneliness of those long nights gave way to the invigorating promise of a new dawn. I could feel the cool air of early morning as I set my alarm before sunrise, ready to seize the day with a heart fortified by resilience. Every challenge that once threatened to break me was now a stepping stone, a reminder that I had the power to shape my own future. In that moment, as I closed my eyes and took a deep, steady breath, I whispered to the darkness, if they wanted to see me broken, they should have tried harder. And that quiet vow, echoing through the stillness of the night, marked the beginning of my resurgence. It was the promise of a future that I would build from the ashes of betrayal, a future where my worth was mine alone, unchallenged and radiant. Every day, as I stepped further into my own power, the world began to notice the shift. Invitations to exclusive events poured in, and soon I found myself moving among influential leaders who admired not only my work, but the strength it took to rise from the ashes. I was no longer the forgotten, dismissed soul of the past. I had become a force, a beacon of resilience and determination that commanded respect without asking for it. Every handshake, every approving nod, every flash of camera light in high-profile gatherings affirmed that I was not just surviving, but thriving on my own terms. In the midst of this transformation, whispers began to spread among those who once basked in the false glow of my husband's mistress. At family gatherings and industry events, I could hear the subtle murmur of disbelief, as if people were trying to reconcile the woman they once dismissed with the powerhouse I had become. The very air seemed to pulse with the realization that my worth had been rewritten. I sensed that every time my name was mentioned, there was a hushed awe, a quiet acknowledgement that I had taken what was once mine and turned it into a shining legacy. I began to see the change reflected in the faces of those who had once supported her. Their glances grew uncertain, their compliments toward her fell flat, and even the sound of her laughter seemed forced and hollow. I watched from across rooms as she tried desperately to maintain the veneer of superiority she had once wielded, so effortlessly. But now, every time she opened her mouth, her words were met with skeptical stares and murmurs of, "Is that really true?" Her attempts to spin the narrative, claiming that I was ungrateful, that I had no idea how hard it was, only served to highlight her own crumbling foundation. I attended a gala one evening where the transformation of my life was on full display. The venue was grand, with soft music, the gentle clink of fine crystal, and a buzz of excitement that radiated through every corner of the room. As I took the stage to present my latest venture, a project born out of years of struggle and a testament to my relentless drive, I could see that even in that elegant setting, the shift in power was palpable. Influential investors, industry, experts, and even old acquaintances looked at me with a blend of admiration and envy. The vibrant energy in the room, the crisp sound of applause, and the subtle flash of camera lights all combined to underscore a truth I had long known. I was unstoppable. And then, amidst the accolades and the thunderous applause, I caught a glimpse of her. Standing near the back of the room, she looked small and almost ghost-like, a shadow of the confident woman she once projected. Her eyes darted nervously, and I could see a flicker of panic as she realized that the very people who had once hung on her every word were now captivated by my story. The sound of her soft, desperate whispers mingled with the ambient chatter, each one a testament to her growing desperation. I could sense that deep inside, she was beginning to understand that she had never truly won. Instead, she was losing. Losing. Her influence, her control, and ultimately her grip on the life she had once coveted. In that moment, every fiber of my being resonated with a quiet vindication. I recalled every sneer, every dismissive remark, and every subtle put-down that she had once hurled at me. And now they all dissolved into insignificance. The very air around me, filled with the scent of success and the soft murmur of newfound respect, was a constant reminder that I had reclaimed my worth. I could feel the crisp weight of a freshly printed contract in my hand, each signature a declaration of my independence. Every new connection I made, every nod of approval from those who once overlooked me was a resounding testament to the life I had built. The shift wasn't just noticed by the elite. I began to see it in everyday interactions, too. Friends who had once quietly agreed with her manipulative narratives now sought my advice. Social media buzzed with congratulatory messages and heartfelt endorsements of my achievements. The endless stream of notifications on my phone, each one a small burst of affirmation, filled me with an exhilarating sense of freedom. I no longer felt the burden of having to prove my worth. Instead, every message was a reminder that I was celebrated for exactly who I was. I could hear the quiet sound of new beginnings in every meeting and every collaborative project I embarked on. The subtle rhythm of success, the gentle hum of productivity in my new office space, the soft clatter of keyboard strokes as I drafted proposals, the satisfying click of a pen signing a deal, became the soundtrack of my ascent. With each passing day, the gap between what she represented and what I had become widened, and it was as if the universe itself was echoing the truth. I was no longer the person she thought I would always be. Then, one crisp evening at a major industry event, as I mingled confidently among peers, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a desperate message from her. A plea laced with regret and the unmistakable tone of someone who had lost control. I held the phone for a moment, feeling the cool metal against my skin, and with a quiet smile of knowing satisfaction, I realized that while she was scrambling to salvage a reputation that was slipping away, I was firmly anchored in the life I had built. Every unreturned call, every ignored message had become a symbol of my liberation. Each one a reminder that I no longer owed anyone my presence, my energy, or my worth. I had reclaimed not only my future, but my identity, and every day was a resounding declaration that I was no longer defined by the neglect and manipulation of my past. Now they needed me, but I had already learned to live without them. In that moment, as the gentle hum of a bustling crowd and the soft glow of ambient lighting surrounded me, I felt an overwhelming peace, a deep, unwavering certainty that my life was mine to shape. The power had shifted irreversibly, and I stood as a testament to the transformation that comes when you refuse to be taken for granted. Every step I took was a silent rebuke to those who once tried to confine me, and every breath a celebration of the life I had finally earned. I smiled as I sent that message into oblivion, a final affirmation that I was living my truth and that nothing could ever reach me again. I walked into the grand hall with a calm that spoke of long-forgotten strength, every step measured as if each one was a declaration of independence. The room was filled with influential guests, the soft hum of conversation mingling with the clink of fine crystal and the low murmur of anticipation. Amid the polished atmosphere, I noticed him standing near the entrance, a figure once so commanding, now reduced to desperate uncertainty. His eyes darted around, searching for an anchor in a sea of unfamiliar faces, and I could see the trembling of his hands as he clutched a crumpled note. He approached slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, laced with regret and the desperation of someone who has lost everything. I never meant for it to end like that, he stammered, his words faltering under the weight of his own remorse. His presence, once so sure and self-important, now seemed fragile, as if every ounce of his former arrogance had crumbled away. The room fell into a heavy silence, and every eye turned our way, as if the entire gathering understood the magnitude of this reversal. I met his gaze steadily, my voice calm but edged with the authority of hard-won resolve. You thought you could end our story with a cold email, that your absence would silence me forever, I said softly. Every word carried the memory of every harsh moment, every snide remark that once left me feeling invisible. The air around us was charged, each subtle sound, the soft rustle of fabrics, the quiet tap of polished shoes on marble, amplifying the gravity of our encounter. He tried again, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and longing. Please, can we talk? His plea echoed weakly, and for a heartbeat, I allowed a fleeting trace of pity to cross my mind. But then I recalled every time I was dismissed, every moment I was made to feel worthless. With a steady breath, I continued. You left me when I needed you most, and now you stand here, hoping for forgiveness that you never deserved. The words fell like a verdict, resonating with every gaze in the room. The atmosphere grew even heavier as the realization settled in. He was exposed, his desperate attempt to reclaim what he had lost laid bare for all to see. I felt the cool touch of the marble beneath my feet, the distant clink of a champagne glass, and the low murmur of approval from those who recognized my transformation. His eyes, now wide with shock and regret, flickered briefly as he searched mine for a sign of weakness, only to find none. In that charged moment, I stepped back and let the silence stretch, each second a silent testament to the finality of our encounter. I built my future from the ashes of your indifference, I declared softly, my voice echoing with unwavering conviction. You thought a few empty words could undo years of my hard work. Instead, they only remind me how far I've come. The murmurs in the room swelled into a quiet, collective nod of understanding, each person present bearing witness to the total reversal of power. I watched as his desperate expression faltered, the brief hope in his eyes fading into resignation. He had come seeking a second chance, a way to mend what he had so callously shattered, but I offered him nothing but the stark truth. There was no going back. The cold finality of my words, like the last chime of a clock, sealed his fate. With that, I turned away, each step measured and resolute, leaving him standing amid the echoes of his own downfall. As I walked into the night, the soft click of my heels and the gentle hum of a liberated crowd followed me. A final, unspoken promise that I had reclaimed every piece of my life. And as the lights dimmed behind me, I knew that his desperate plea was nothing more than a whisper lost in the vast, unyielding sound of my triumph. I stand here now, a quiet force forged by heartbreak and built through relentless determination. Every step I've taken since that fateful wedding has led me to a place where my worth is defined by my own strength, not by the fleeting words of a man who once dismissed me with a cold email. The echoes of that day, those painful whispers, and the empty stares have faded into the background, replaced by the steady rhythm of a life that I now control. In the soft glow of early evening, as the city lights shimmer on glass and the gentle hum of celebration fills the air, I reflect on the long journey from betrayal to liberation. I recall the shock and humiliation that once threatened to break me, the overwhelming despair that seemed to close in with every passing moment. Yet with each sunrise, I rebuilt myself, piece by painful piece, until I emerged with a newfound clarity and a fierce sense of purpose. Now, I walk through life with a calm certainty, my heart unburdened by the weight of the past. I've learned to turn every cruel word, every act of neglect, into the fuel that propels me forward. The sound of genuine laughter surrounds me, the warm embrace of friends lifts my spirit, and the soft glow of a hopeful future guides my way. I no longer wait for apologies or for a chance to mend broken ties. Instead, I have built a world where I am both the architect and the guardian of my own destiny. In every quiet moment, as I gaze at the stars or feel the cool night air brush against my skin, I remember that my true power was never granted by someone else. It was born from my own refusal to be defined by their shallow acts of betrayal. The memories of that painful day now serve as a reminder of how far I have come, each scar a mark of the strength I've gained along the way. I have learned that the ultimate triumph is not in seeking revenge, but in finding peace within myself, in creating a life where I can truly flourish. I leave behind a past filled with hurt and disappointment, stepping boldly into a future where every day is a celebration of my resilience. The whispers of regret from those who once tried to hold me back are now drowned out by the soft, steady applause of a life rebuilt. And as I walk forward into the promise of a new dawn, I carry with me the unshakable truth that I am complete on my own, a radiant, unbreakable spirit rising above it all.